Every gardener knows the frustration of building a compost pile with high hopes, only to watch it sit there like a stubborn heap. It smells sour instead of earthy. It breaks down slower than you expected. Sometimes it attracts flies, rodents, or even molds that seem more harmful than helpful. You keep turning it, adding more kitchen scraps or yard waste, and still the pile looks unchanged weeks later. The dream of rich black compost that melts into the soil and powers your crops starts to feel more like a chore than a reward. Traditional advice says balance your greens and browns, manage moisture, and aerate regularly. And while those steps are essential, many gardeners still struggle. The reason is simple. The pile is missing a true biological spark. Compost doesn't just need material, it needs a thriving microbial community to come alive. Without a proper kickstart, your pile remains sluggish. The good news is that there's a simple, overlooked ingredient that can transform your compost overnight, igniting life in every corner of the heap. That missing ingredient is something most people discard without a second thought: stale milk and other soured dairy. More specifically, the real magic lies in the lactic acid bacteria they contain. Long before gardeners had commercial inoculants or fancy microbial powders, they relied on natural fermentation byproducts to spark biological activity. Sour milk, yogurt whey, and similar liquids were poured into compost piles or soil trenches, and the results were nothing short of explosive. Here's why it works. Lactic acid bacteria are some of the fastest colonizers in nature. They thrive in slightly damp, organic-rich environments, exactly like your compost heap. Once introduced, they immediately begin breaking down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats at a pace far beyond what a raw pile could achieve on its own. They also create an acidic microenvironment that suppresses foul-smelling pathogens, reducing the rotten egg odor that frustrates so many gardeners. As they work, they pave the way for heat-loving microbes and fungi to take over, building that rich, steaming core every composter longs to see. You know, what's incredible is just how accessible this ingredient really is. Almost every household has a forgotten carton of milk tucked away at the back of the fridge, maybe a little whey left over from straining yogurt, or even just a splash of buttermilk. Instead of pouring it down the drain, that liquid gold can actually become the jumpstart your compost pile desperately needs. Using sour milk or whey in compost is honestly pretty simple, but it works best if you keep a few key guidelines in mind. First, think of it as a microbial inoculant, not a bulk ingredient. You don't need gallons to see results. Just a quart or even a cup, diluted with water and sprinkled over your pile, is often enough to set off a chain reaction. When you pour it across layers of greens and browns, the bacteria spread quickly, multiplying and feeding on the sugars in your vegetable scraps, grass clippings, and other organic matter. Frequency matters too. Adding a dose once when you build the pile and again after the first turning usually provides more than enough inoculation. Too much dairy poured in at once can create slimy pockets and attract pests, so moderation is definitely key. The goal isn't to feed the pile with milk, but to seed it with the microbial workers inside the milk. Within just a few days, you'll start to notice some real changes. The pile heats more evenly and the odors shift from sharp and sour to something more earthy and pleasant. Plus, decomposition really starts to accelerate. Materials that once sat inert, like corn husks, leaves, and even cardboard, begin softening and darkening much faster. In many cases, gardeners report their pile reducing in size within a week after adding just a small amount of sour milk or whey. That's the power of microbial activation. For those gardeners ready to push this practice even further, there are some advanced strategies that might be worth trying. Pairing sour milk with high-carbon materials like shredded leaves or straw helps to prevent the pile from going too wet. You see, the lactic acid bacteria thrive with a steady supply of carbohydrates, and these browns provide the perfect base for balanced fermentation. Aerating the pile after adding the ingredient also helps distribute the microbes evenly, avoiding those pesky patches of anaerobic conditions. Now, if the pile ever starts smelling like rotten dairy, that's a sign of overapplication. The solution is pretty simple. Just add more dry carbon material and turn the pile to reintroduce airflow. On the other hand, if you don't notice any heat or microbial activity after a week, it may mean your compost was just too dry for the bacteria to establish. A light watering usually corrects this and restarts the biological engine. Some gardeners even go a step further and create a lactic acid serum by fermenting rice water or milk with a bit of sugar. This creates a concentrated microbial solution that can be sprayed onto compost or soil, functioning much like modern inoculants but at virtually no cost. Whether you keep it simple with leftover sour milk or experiment with homemade brews, the principle remains the same. Adding lactic acid bacteria transforms compost from a sluggish pile into a thriving ecosystem. You know, a healthy compost pile is more than just a recycling system. It's really the foundation of soil fertility. By introducing this forgotten ingredient, you're not only accelerating the breakdown of waste, but also enriching the microbial diversity of your soil. Plants that are fed with compost activated by lactic acid bacteria show stronger growth, improved disease resistance, and honestly, greater resilience under stress. That's because the microbes don't stop working when the compost is finished. They actually carry over into the soil, colonizing the root zone and forming living partnerships with your crops. The best part is the accessibility. You don't need to buy expensive activators or bottled microbial blends. The solution is already in your kitchen, often discarded without a second thought. By reclaiming something as humble as sour milk, you step into a tradition of gardeners who knew how to turn waste into abundance. It's really the ultimate example of resourcefulness, closing loops, saving money, and feeding your soil with life rather than chemicals. So, the next time your compost feels lifeless, don't despair. Just reach for that forgotten carton, add a splash to your pile, and watch as the transformation unfolds. This is more than a quick trick, it's a mindset shift. Gardening isn't just about feeding plants, but about cultivating the unseen communities that make soil thrive. When you give them what they need, they return the favor many times over. In the end, compost is not a heap of waste. It's the heartbeat of a living garden. It connects kitchen, yard, and soil into a single cycle of renewal. But for that cycle to thrive, it needs life, and life begins with microbes. By using this forgotten ingredient, you're not just speeding up decomposition, you're laying the foundation for soil that stays fertile season after season. For serious gardeners, this is the difference between soil that barely sustains crops and soil that overflows with vitality. It's about building a garden that feeds itself, one pile at a time. And, honestly, it all starts with remembering that something as simple as sour milk can hold the key. If you found this guide valuable and you're ready to take your composting and soil health to the next level, make sure to subscribe to Soil and Crop Doctor and share this with other gardeners. Together, we can spread these timeless, practical solutions and keep our soils bursting with life for generations to come.